Hi. I just wanted to share something that has been bothering me in
Hmm.
the last week so that maybe we can do something in the meditation to help this. It's in my own personal life, I feel a lot of injustices, particularly towards women who come forward and they're attacked. And it was very hard to come to terms with. And maybe I thought I had dealt with it, but it's a spiral, isn't it?
Hmm.
And then the Ukraine situation and the injustices there, which made my own injustices felt very humbling. And then the animals being killed. And the whole theme of last week is I kept getting very upset through my personal experiences and collective at the injustices and the pain and suffering. And it's just made me question the divine, everything. Why is this happening? Why is the divine letting this happen? If Putin is divine himself, why is he doing these things,
Yeah.
killing people? And I'm just struggling with the whole thing.
Yeah. And thank you for opening that up because that I think is an important thing to come back to. And the first thing that comes to mind is, my conversations with spirit around these same ideas is that spirit shows us, nature shows us that the light and the dark, the shadow and the light is present in all things. Fire can be the thing that cooks our food and keeps us warm. It can also be the thing that destroys everything. Water can be the source of life and is the source of life. It can also be the thing that flattens the village. Same thing with the earth. We plant our seeds in there and it grows our food, but it can also bury us. And the air can be come in and clear the space. It can, bring in new thoughts. But again, it can also flatten and destroy. So this idea that one is separate than from the other is a fallacy that I think we need to find the center within ourselves. That
Mm.
just because there is bad does not mean that it is still not within the good. And
Yeah,
that spirit uses the shadow to show us where she is. Because if it's just light, then it's a flat white wall. It's nothing. And if it's just
yeah,
dark, it's endless, vast, with no end. And so we must have both. We must. And as we use these atrocious experiences as a reminder of that, we also see that it is an opportunity to move towards that with love, to move towards that with light. One of the things that I kept hearing this morning was, Andrew, be generous with your light. Be generous with your light. Do not withhold it. Do not restrict it. Do not shy away from the dark. Do not let the dark convince you that your light is still not present. And so when we see the darkness encroaching, and I have this vision of like a sandstorm in the desert coming in, or the big clouds of the tornado or the hurricane, these big black clouds that are rolling in, our tendency is often to run and to hide, to find safety. Oh my God, I'm in danger. But in the spiritual sense, it is to move towards that with your light. Stand against it. Stand up and say, I will not be moved. My suffering does nothing to make anyone better. My
mm,
sadness and misery and disconnection from my center is often, I believe, what those who perpetrate the dark want me to do. They want me to leave my center. They want me to forget my light. They want me to believe that they are more powerful. They want me to believe that it is never ending. But at the quantum level, we know that a single drop of pure water can clean the entire ocean. So let the thing that you respond with, and certainly tend to your own grief and tend to your own sadness, but the contrast that we receive reminds us that we have a choice. And as we continue to exit the duality of the matrix, the 3D limitation of either you're with me or you're not, you're either good or you're bad. And we all know that the terms of right and wrong and good and bad are really only defined by those who write history. And those who write history are usually the ones that had more power, more control, and more money. But that does not mean that they won. It just means that they wrote the story from their perspective. So to remember that in the dichotomy of a 3D experience, someone has to play the villain. Otherwise, how would we learn? It is often the oppression that pushes us to the point to finally stand up and say, no, enough. Because if everything was easy and everything was effortless and everything was snap my fingers and there I have it, which is what we have when we are in our perfected state, right? If we think of it hierarchically, when we're up there, that's what life is. And to a limitless eternal being, that's actually quite boring. There is no challenge. There is nothing to remind me of my power. There is nothing that pushes me against the wall and unlocks that thing within me that triggers that remembrance to say, no, I do have a voice. And if the only thing that you can do is to remember your light, that is where you start. I think there's also this perception that we look at these experiences, like a war, for example, and the oppression of women and the subjugation of animals. And we look at these things as a monolith. It's like standing at the base of, Mount Everest in your shorts and your sandals saying, I am in no way prepared to climb this mountain, and yet here I am. So you don't start with the monolith. You start with, okay, where is my light today? Where is my peace and my power right now? And you start by recalling it in small ways, and then it becomes the ember that you gently blow upon. And then over time, and with enough nurturing and focus, it then becomes the raging inferno within you, and you remember, and then you can ask, okay, Spirit, how can I move the mark on the world? But that must begin by moving the mark on yourself. Because how we treat ourselves is how we treat the world. So to remember that, yes, these things, as horrible as they are, these souls also chose to come and be the representation and the example of what happens when one tries to create outside of the light, outside of the truth, outside of universal law. So it's a difficult thing, to be sure. And especially when we have a personal relationship with it as a member of, an oppressed minority or an oppressed group, it can feel even more personal. It can feel even closer. And the way I look at it is, when it comes to animals, because, I've moved much more towards a vegetarian diet over the years, not vegan yet, but getting closer. And I'm reminded that the animal chose a life where it could potentially be used as a food source. That is its choice. My choice is what I do in response to their willingness to be my food. So it's up to me to go, wow, this being said, yeah, I came in here full well knowing that I could potentially be killed for someone's dinner. And that was what I said yes to. Just like nature. I walk outside and I have the potential to interact with something that could be just as light as it could be dark. So I think it's remembering that it was all a choice on some level that does not deny the misery and suffering from the human perspective, but it does put it into a larger context that everyone is living out the path that they decided as a soul they were going to walk. Because the soul wants to paint with all of the colors. It doesn't come here just to have a pretty, lovely, peaceful experience. That's what we're moving towards. And from my perspective, that's what these implosions and explosions of chaos on the planet are evidence of. It's the body purging the illness. When we are sick, we have a fever, we're, expelling things, stuff is coming out of all sorts of places that's nasty and gross and uncomfortable and often scary. But that's how we return to that divine blueprint. So the evidence of chaos is not necessarily an illustration of the divine not being present. I think it's actually the opposite. It is an illustration of the divine coming in saying, okay, time's up. This cannot happen anymore. I'm revoking your permission slip. And now I'm moving in with this infusion of light to push all of that stuff to the surface. So see it as an opportunity to be in deep, deep gratitude for the sacrifice that those souls made. See it as an opportunity to remember that you leaving your center of well-being serves nobody. See it as an opportunity to remember that in the face of atrocity, the most powerful thing you have is a response that comes from the heart, from the light, and from the center of self. Because I will not meet trauma with trauma. I will not meet fear with fear. I will meet it all with love. And when I forget how to do that, that's a sign to me that I need to stop, turn off the TV, turn off the computer, put my phone down, go outside in nature, wherever I need to go to remind me, to reconnect me. And then I find my connection point. And then I ask, what can I do? How can I serve? And if I don't have any answers, then I remember, be generous with your light.
Mm.
So that's how I see it. And I think that's the knife's edge we walk as these awakened beings in a human experience. And someone said the other day, you know, it was such a beautiful compliment. She said, Andrew, you are a bright light on a dark stage. And I thought, well, that's what this is. We just have to be the starlight. We have to be the lamppost on the otherwise dark road. Because if I let the darkness convince me to turn off my light, then I just joined the darkness. So feel the anger, feel the sadness, feel the rage, let it go, express it, don't hang on to it, don't stuff it. And then come back to the center and ask, what shall I do? What is my part to play in moving the mark beyond our history of this? Because I think what we're seeing, I was thinking about this morning, this idea of the intellect, and what I've shared before is, and my belief is that, you know, the intellect, the limitation of the intellect is that it only knows things historically. The intellect can only know what has already happened. It is not the visionary. The visionary is the intuitive feeling center, and the intuitive feeling center is what feeds the intellect and says, okay, here's what's coming. And the intellect goes, oh, okay, so this is perhaps where we can put this information, or this is perhaps what we can generally expect based on history. But my point being that we often put the intellect in charge of solving these problems, right? Oppression, violence, chaos, you know, subjugation, trashing the planet. And what I thought very clearly this morning is that if the intellect was the solution, we would not be where we are. Because all we're doing is thinking about, how do I fix this? But all we're doing is looking to history. So if I'm only looking to history, all I have access to is the broken pieces of the thing that already didn't work. So I'm trying to rebuild the car out of the broken car. And really what we're called to do is to go into a deeper sense, go deeper into the self. And yes, the intellect has its place, but not until, because the intellect is the masculine, the intuition is the feminine. And we've begun to see through this work that the feminine is the first, it's feminine first. It always is. Even in the womb, the embryo is feminine until it's, you know, getting a shot of the other hormone. So it's always the feminine first, and then the feminine informs the masculine. So when we don't understand and we can't make sense of it, I think that that's an opportunity to say, okay, intellect, I'm going to let you go to bed for a minute. You're going to take a nap. I'm going to dive into this deep feeling place that isn't linear, that isn't rational, that isn't logical, that doesn't necessarily follow 2 and 2 equals 4. And I'm going to commune with that truth of who I am, and then let it inspire me into right action. So I think, Nina, the answer is, and I hear it within you, the desire to make it right, or the desire to end it or stop it or fix it, or how do we get out of it? And that's a perfectly natural response. But just remember that what we can always do, even when we don't have an answer, is just meet it with light. Be unflinching in your ability to be the spotlight on the things that need the light brought to them. And refuse to leave your center.
Yeah. it's just it's integrating the human emotions and the spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
Being human and being spiritual is a
Yeah.
tough path to walk.
It
But
certainly is. And that's why we came to Earth, because the Earth is the mastery school. This is where we have the opportunity to embody those things in the physical. And that's why we came back in this lifetime, was not to learn, but to remember. To remember. We already know everything we need to know. We just need to remember now as we unlock it. And I oftentimes think of it as like the kid, right? The child in the night. Mommy, I'm scared. Why? I'm just scared. Okay. Your fear is justified in and of itself. You don't have to know why you're afraid, baby. I can still put my arm around you and pull you close. So it's okay if we don't have an answer. It's okay if we don't have an understanding. And I would venture that I think it's best if we don't know, because if I already know the answer, then chances are it's not a new solution. It's just rehashing some old idea that already doesn't work. So in the gray areas, in the nuance, in the undefinable, undefined places that are often the most uncomfortable places to be, that I believe is where the truth is found. So when you think of these figures, shine your light on them. It doesn't excuse what they've done and who they are. But I take my cue from the Divine Mother, because that's what she's going to do. She doesn't punish. She recalls and she shines her beauty upon them and says, this is what you chose. So shine the light on them so that they can't get away from what they chose. They can't defer or deny what they chose. And also know that justice is not necessarily ours. It is ultimately the divine's. And the last piece I'll share is what I know is that when we ask for something, and the question of, how would the divine allow these horrible things to happen? Why doesn't the divine just come down and say, it's done, snap her fingers and make it all better? Well, because humans learn through their own understanding, and they learn through their physical experience. So even if we were able to just suddenly wave a wand and suddenly peace is on the planet, well, the ideas that created the war and violence haven't gone anywhere. So it is only through our own understanding of something and getting to the point where we claim it, because the divine will not get in this reality on earth where we have free will. The divine says you can have anything you want, but you have to choose it first. So for her to come down and say, poof, it's peaceful, we can't go 2 minutes on this planet without calling for the death of someone. So we'd mess it up. I mean, she could come this afternoon and say, okay, world peace. I guarantee you by tomorrow morning, we'd be back in a very similar state. The point being is, the divine says, yes, you can have what you desire, but you must find the seeds of it within yourself first, because you have to be at the frequency of love to manifest it. You have to be, I can't get to love and peace from anger and misery. So choose it, be the choice of it first. Be the first one to choose the light. Be the first one to choose compassion. Be the first one to choose forgiveness. Be the first one to choose creating spaces where people are accountable for what they bring into those spaces. And start creating those models in ways that perhaps to the mind feel insignificant and small. But love always feels like love. From a frequency vibrational perspective, if we could take a snapshot of joy from the whole planet is liberated, and a snapshot of joy because they finally had my favorite ice cream back in the store. If I showed you a snapshot of those two experiences of joy and didn't tell you which was which, you would see no difference. So joy is always joy. Love is always love. Forgiveness is always forgiveness. Happiness is always happiness. And anger is always anger. So let yourself have what you're having. Let yourself experience it. Acknowledge it. Let it out. Yell into the pillows. Break things. Go to the beach and plant yourself there and ask for the ocean to take it away. Whatever you can do to move it out of your system, and then come back to what you choose.
Thank you.
You're welcome, dear. Thank you for opening that conversation.
Okay.
I think it's one that needs to be had. And I think it's very easy to lose track. And, social media can be and the news and the media at large can be, it's just an echo chamber of all the things that we want to, because what I see people doing, if they're posting things and talking about it, it's an effort for them to feel like they've done something. And I don't discount that, but it also oftentimes allows us to go, post hashtag world peace. And then I get to go back to my life of living blindly, of living unconsciously, of living disconnectedly. But I feel good because I posted something and I got the dopamine hit because 25 people liked it. But did I really do anything? Did I really move the mark by myself being the divine in action? That is the thing. Your choice is the divine in action, period. The only reason any being is alive on the planet is because they were given the divine spark. It can be no other way. There is one source, and that's where it all comes from. And these are the master level lessons that we have come here to embody and to live. Because again, it's real easy to remember these things when you're sitting up on the cloud and you have all of your full memory of everything you've ever done and been, and you don't have the amnesia that we agree to when we come into this physical form. But that's not the point. The point is, oh, I'm going to go into that experience called Andrew. And for the first 40 something years, my life is going to be just a fucking mess. And I can't wait because it is going to be the ultimate adventure. And then around my mid 40s, I'm going to finally shut the fuck up and get out of my own way and choose something new. And I can't wait because then the 10 years from 40-ish to 50-ish are going to be the most revolutionary in that entire experience. And I cannot wait. And it's going to be brutal and it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be horrible and it's going to be amazing. And I can't wait to experience it all. And that's what we all say. So what I often ask is, okay, I know I chose this. Now I just need to remember why. And that's what calls forth the purpose. That's what calls forth the reason. That's what calls forth the context that allows me to go, oh, I see. I see. Because the Olympic athlete doesn't go to the Olympics because it's really easy. They go there because it is the challenge for the best athletes on the planet. And if I want to have the gold medal and have the title of the best swimmer in the world, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge because I need it to be a challenge. Otherwise, it doesn't call me to train harder or smarter or dig deeper. It just allows me to go, oh yeah, okay, whatever. I did a little swimming today. So just remember that. And this is one of the pieces that I think is important that we begin to incorporate as we start this work. Assume with the assumption that there is value in this experience. I may not like it. It may not be easy, but there is value. I don't have to worry about good and bad, right or wrong. I don't have to be the moral compass. I can just say, okay, I'm here. And if I'm here, then on some level, I chose it.